I'll be honest, I've never really dated women and prefer guys, but I've heard lots of older men I know tell me the same thing about how I should live the bachelor life and don't get married and be miserable. What's with this? While being in a same-sex relationship has its own issues, I do believe it is easier in other aspects. Story 1. Live your own life how you want to live it, dude. Marriage is for some and not for others. You will learn with time whether marriage is for you or not. But for the love of all that is good in the world, do not get married just because time is running out or some nonsense. It's not worth it and won't work out because that is not love. Story 2. I have been happily married. I've been lucky. But that's the thing, I have been lucky. I've heard so many stories by now from my friends or coworkers that I am not sure what I am going to tell my child in a few years. Especially in America, a difficult woman can ruin you financially and emotionally. I have seen this. I know people like that. I feel so bad for them. The problem is that when you are in love, you just ignore the signals. Very important signals. If you think that there is even a small chance that your fiancé is difficult, she probably is, and don't do it. I mean, it is the same for girls. If your fiancé is sometimes inconsiderate or he hits you, he will not change. He will do it more and more often. Don't ignore signals and gut feeling. Story 3. You have to decide who you want to be like. Then only take advice from those people. Nearly all the men in my family and their friends were a bunch of losers. Multiple divorces, kids who hate them, crappy jobs. However, I was able to interact with some older guys who had great marriages and lives. I listened and watched what they did. And when they told me how great my girlfriend was, I knew I should marry her. Guess what? Still married. Have a great life. Being married is awesome for me. It's awesome for my kids. It's awesome. My life is more awesome every day, and I don't live like a loser, groveling yes man like the loser guys who marry the best-looking woman who will have them. Just marry the right person, not necessarily the best person. Don't take advice from people unless you want to end up like them. Story 4. I am happily married. I will also never get married again. Part of it is going through the whole rigmarole again, but another part is the finality of it all. I've loved in high school, I've dated in college, and I've loved again as an adult. If my wife and I ever separated, I'd not marry again because I can't see myself taking, or wanting to take, anything as seriously as I've taken my marriage. Story 5. Sounds like they either got screwed in a divorce or lost interest in their wives. The guys who are happy in their marriage aren't going to bring it up because they're just chilling. Story 6. Make sure you're at a point in your life where losing your partner won't make you crumble physically, mentally, and financially. People don't take love, commitment, or marriage seriously these days, and you, being a man who was probably raised in a decent setting, will give your first relationship your all because it's what you were raised to do, while your first partner may be a damaged person who will use and discard you. You can avoid the pain and worry by getting yourself to a point in your life where you can afford to lose partners without falling apart. That means job, school, house, whatever it takes. Story 7. I heard this a lot growing up and as an adult when I had peers that were married. I think they say this because they miss having their freedom. It's not that they don't love their wives and kids. It's just that they get trapped in a domestic rut and can't find room for themselves. They can't just get up and do random things and they don't get much alone time. If they want to hang out with other male friends, it has guardrails and has to be approved activities and locations with approved people for an approved amount of time. Another part of it is you're no longer in control of your life. You get bossed around at work and at home, often in the same day, over and over again. For all big decisions, you have to account for your spouse, so you can't really live where you want, drive what you want, or even buy a TV when you want. When my married friends come around, they always say they want to trade places and say things like, "Bro, if I was single, I'd do X, Y, Z." That tells me that there's something missing or unfulfilled in their life. I know a lot of guys wish they could be free to have sex with other women, but they don't take into account the actual work that goes into that. How women and the dating market have changed since they got married. They overestimate their position in the dating market, showing up out of shape, poorly dressed, and corny as hell, thinking they can still pull like they did back in the day. This isn't all men or marriages, just some common threads I've noticed over the years. Story 8. I would say do not get married young. Do not get married out of fear of being alone or feeling lonely. Do not get married because all my friends are settling down, and do not get married if you have hidden parts of yourself or compromised who you are to get the girl. Also, do not get married if you argue all the time. Relationships are not supposed to be that difficult. Story 9. I'm happily married and still wouldn't recommend marriage, at least not as the default option. I do recommend long-term commitment, but I don't recommend chaining yourself up legally so much that either party leaving means years of pain and trauma, emotionally and financially. Story 10. Marriage has become a disposable commodity, and there is almost no benefit for men. Almost 70% of divorces are initiated by women, who overwhelmingly cite being unhappy as the cause, rather than infidelity or abuse, and men disproportionately lose in divorce settlements. With divorce rates still trending upward, why bother becoming part of those statistics? Story 11. Probably going to get a lot of down votes for this, but here goes. I am almost 30 now and have dated men most of my life, even married one. Real talk. It was wonderful and blissful for a while. I do not dislike it, but I was really young at the time, so who knows? What I was shocked to realize as I grew older and more sociopolitically aware was that most men do not see marriage as a deeply spiritual experience to be approached with flexibility and communication. There are definitely some problems with the way that most heterosexual women see marriage too, but not my problem. With men, though, it is often a mix of strong affinity for their partner and the concept of security and conformity. We really hinder most men's ability to respect themselves and actualize in a way that allows them to stand on their own and survive outside of gender roles. At some point, men do feel like it is the right thing to settle down, take a wife, and have children. And it seems many do not think too far beyond that. They try to find a partner they are attracted to and who will not bore them, but there rarely seems to be much more to the list than that. Many are shocked to realize that they are expected to be accountable to another human being, that partnership requires compassion and understanding, and unfortunately, many do not really bring a sense of self-possession to the table. They expect so much slack to be picked up by their partners. In graduate school, we often talked about how married people tend to progress more quickly, and married men were much more likely to succeed than married women. When you observed, you kind of realized why. Their partners were taking care of the home, managing budgets, performing much of the child-rearing labor, and even making the moving plans and planning get-togethers. On top of that, they were able to afford larger and more comfortable spaces because they were splitting the rent with another working adult. But it often leads to the big messy academic divorce where he starts drinking and she starts over from scratch. And it is always never get married and never, I think I was not ready to bind myself to another human being. That, to me, hints at a culture of masculinity that lacks accountability and makes life harder on men who would probably be happier learning to self-actualize through other interests and non-romantic relationships. How many men, I wonder, have stunted their own growth because they decided to get into a relationship out of convenience and desire rather than learn a new way of self-expression? Story 12. My advice is to get your life in order, buy a house, and have money saved before thinking about getting married. Never put their name on any of your financial accounts and don't let them pay anything towards your mortgage. If you decide to start a family, don't let her be a stay-at-home mom. Follow these steps to minimize the financial difficulties that happen when you get a divorce. Getting married isn't bad. Getting divorced is a horror show. Story 13. I'm a 34-year-old male, so in that mid-older millennial area, I saw the concept of men becoming more emotionally mature become something to be taken seriously. I'm going to try answering this without being needlessly insulting to any group. Older men were raised in societies where they were told they needed to take risks, have adventures, attain a respectable status within society, and then have a family. There was little to no emphasis on empathy, soft social skills, defending the vulnerable, etc. It's the classic rat race mentality. This culture has improved, particularly among Generation Z, but it has been the culture of men for all living memory. As a result of the conditions described above, when men got married, their expectations were that they provide income and occasionally make a big romantic gesture. Then their wife and society would be happy. Obviously, as women are fully fledged, multidimensional people, this resulted in a lot of frustrated marriages. Men found women didn't want or resented having children. They wanted more engagement and love. They want support with their own lives and aspirations. Older men, having been provided with none of the tools or knowledge to navigate this, typically became sad, angry, or defeated. Women of this time wound up frustrated or even lashing out via cheating, making divorces difficult, etc. In some cases, simply because they were bad people, but for many, it was pent-up frustration of living with a man that has seemingly zero emotional intelligence or desire to be around them. This is why the understanding, ripped hippie guy affair stereotype exists. Older men will typically hang out with men their own age who are also disillusioned with all these irrational women, which then creates a bubble wherein women are seen as the old ball and chain, a thing there to drag you down when you're feeling up. When realistically, a lot of these situations can be summed up with the woman feeling miserable and seeing her husband in a good mood, which causes resentment. The truth is, marriages are hard work with the potential of a high reward. Women have a whole universe in their hearts and minds that we men often lack. Not due to us being incapable or broken, but because we have been treated a certain way our whole lives due to the width of our shoulders, the pitch of our voice, and our physical attributes. Supporting, protecting, and truly loving a woman who returns in kind is one of the most fulfilling experiences life offers. However, you need to find the right woman and be ready to put in the work. Story 14. You get more respect from women, and you have more authority and leverage when you're outside of marriage as opposed to inside of a marriage. Marriage creates stability, which is conducive to having a family. But for an individual man, you don't really gain any sort of security by entering into a marriage. You take on more responsibility, but there's not really anything you're gaining by making that commitment. It's a sacrifice without a reward. Story 15. Lots of data shows that wives are causing or starting divorces. I wish I had just had a child with a girlfriend and never gotten married. Men lose a lot when married. Story 16. The simple answer is time. Inevitably, people change over time, and we older guys have seen it firsthand. My marriage lasted 15 years, and I was lucky that she was a great human being, so the divorce wasn't as bad as it could have been. But we still had to part ways because we both changed, and the new versions of us were not meant to stay married. She's since remarried, and I was at their wedding, very happy for them both. But in retrospect, not being married would have made things a whole lot easier. Divorce is difficult, and I can't believe people remarry. Story 17. Almost every man who has told me, a 33-year-old male, to never get married are chauvinistic idiots who treat their wives like dirt. When and if you find the person you love, treat them with dignity and respect. Marry them if you have an urge to solidify your love in that way, and don't listen to anyone else in that regard. Story 18. I don't see any benefit. It's just some sort of contract. This paper never had any effect on how I've seen my woman. So no, I would not get married ever again. Waste of money. Story 19. Relationships of all kinds are awesome when good and a living nightmare when bad. I guess you were advised by people who were in the latter situation. It's pretty well studied that there's no faster way of building wealth together than to get married, for example. Story 20. You have very little to gain and everything to lose by getting married. I'm not telling you that you shouldn't, but you have to look at it objectively. Best case scenario, you meet someone and live happily ever after. Worst case, aside from her being a psycho and killing you in your sleep, you lose everything and live in poverty most of your life. There's plenty in between those two. But what do you really gain by getting married? Maybe some legal rights, most of which you can get by signing a legal document or two, but not a whole lot else. You don't need to be married to love someone. You don't need to be married to live together or have children. Getting married is simply signing a legally binding contract. Story 21. I won't say never. I worked at your age. Now, in my 40s, I am sitting in my house with my dog, hearing about everyone complaining about their significant others. Story 22. Basically, divorce can get ugly, especially regarding the asset split and alimony. I imagine when people get married, they don't think about the situation where things could go wrong, like divorce. Hence, many things like prenuptial agreements get overlooked, which could act as very nice insurance. Basically, marriage, whether you like it or not, is a mixture of love, ideally, but also a business contract. It's literally a legal document. Ideally, as a man in the 21st century with some form of assets, if you're getting married, you should have a watertight prenuptial agreement, a partner with a good family background and friends with values, someone who is at least kind of in the same financial bracket as you, because the courts disadvantage you the most when the wife is much poorer than the husband. My personal belief is that people don't put as much thought into who they're marrying as they should. For example, look beyond the love aspect into the practical side of things. Just because you buy home insurance doesn't mean that you're hoping for your house to burn down. A similar analogy applies to all the insurance options I've mentioned for marriage.